Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thank you so much to Creative Mornings. This is, I hadn't heard about it until a couple weeks ago when they asked me to speak. And I love events like this because I think events like this are needed in Calgary. Some of us work from home and some of us work in small offices. And so to gather together in beautiful spaces like C Space is really incredible. And it makes me feel happy that I'm not just home talking to my cat all the time. Although I really miss her right now. It's been about an hour. Yeah. So today I'm going to talk about the balance of business and politics. It is a topic that they actually helped me come up with because when we were talking about the theme of taboos, and this is what I wanted to say. Taboo is a word that you don't know if you're saying right all of a sudden. You never thought about it before, and then as soon as you start, you're like, taboo, you see? So definition of taboo, a social or religious custom prohibiting or forbidding discussion of a particular practice or forbidding association with a particular person, place, or thing. I love more than anything to rely on Urban Dictionary for my actual definitions. Something that's generally not talked about. Wow, Mr. White, I have such a bad rash on my balls. Now we know. Now we're in the same space. Is that a Breaking Bad quote? I don't know. Like maybe, I don't know. I don't know. For me, this topic, when we came up with this topic, we announced it. More than anything I've done recently, I got so many emails about it, and it was something that people, I guess, were very curious about. You guys are all here today. And what's funny is it's nothing in my career is actually that calculated, as much as I would like to say it is. My career is sort of all over the map, and I sort of let some forces, I guess, sort of decide, and some decisions decide which way I'm going. So just to give you a brief rundown of what who I am in case you don't know. So my businesses, as you talked about, Mike's Bloggity Blog, Calgary by Bike, Social West. I do digital correspondent for Coronation Street. Any Corey fans? Yeah, there we go. I also do travel Alberta contract work, and I do lots of consulting and speaking and things like that. So none of this that I do now, none of my education or my life really said I would end up here. I have a degree in Spanish from a university in New Brunswick. Very useful, really useful. But I moved here 11 years ago, didn't really know anyone, and started Mike's Bloggity Blog because I loved writing. I always loved writing. And blogs were a way, all of a sudden, writers had a way of getting their voices out there in ways that weren't possible before. So this was before blogs could make money and before bloggers got paid to do things and influencers and stuff like that. So now it's been my full-time job. Mike's Bloggity Blog has been my full-time job for 4 years now. I was lucky enough to get a job as a producer at Breakfast Television, and I was there for 3.5 years, and then I left to pursue Mike's Bloggity Blog full-time. So it's been an interesting journey because most bloggers, as you know, we like to stay in a pretty safe zone. We like to talk about, whether it's food or fashion or lifestyle and things like that, and I certainly do that. So Mike's Bloggity Blog focuses on Canadian entertainment, Canadian pop culture, venturing more into travel. Sometimes, last week I was in Quebec talking about the Ford Raptor, which is a truck, I guess. I don't know. It was a trip to Quebec. I just went. No, but so it really is sort of rolling with the punches, the good and the bad. I think for a lot of people, what sort of got their attention about me in Calgary was when I started using social media to talk about politics. And this is very risky because we are taught it is taboo to talk about politics. We are taught to not talk about it at the dinner table. Even if I do something, I still don't hear from my parents till like 5 days later. They're like, so we saw you on the national news. Or their friends will tell them, and they'll be like, no, that's not our son. But for me, and I'll tell you a couple different stories, but for me, as a gay person in Calgary and Alberta, you were for years ago, and it's amazing actually how I was speaking at a high school this week about social change, and it's amazing how far, because I've gone to that high school now 3 years, and how much the story's changed each year. It's actually, the kids there can't believe what we had to do 3 years ago because it's just so normal for them. So, but for me, I think I started getting really political around Bill 10, which was a bill a couple years ago at the previous government, the PC government, that was supposed to make GSAs, gay straight alliances, easier in schools. And to be honest, before the debate started picking up, I had no idea what gay straight alliances were. We didn't have them when I was in school, certainly. But once I figured it out, I realized that it was something that was incredibly important. As we sort of work on gay rights in Alberta, we also, and as a nation, has been talking about mental health, and to me, they sort of are one and the same many times. And so, when Bill 10, which initially, if a student asked their principal for a gay straight alliance, the principal could just say flat out no, and the student would be stopped there. That was one incarnation of the bill. The second incarnation of the bill was the principal could say no, then the student would have to go to a school board, the school board could say no, and then the student would then have to go to the Minister of Education, and he or she at the time, he would have to say yes, which was crazy because we don't even know what 14-year-olds can't do, they don't want to talk to their principal at all, let alone defy the school board, then go up to the Minister of Education. The third incarnation of the bill was fine, you can have your gay straight alliance, but we're going to bus you to a different school or different building, so you're not going to be able to have it on the campus. This is crazy. Some of you are shaking your heads 2.5 years ago. So for me, sitting there watching this, I couldn't sit there and do it. And I wish I had a big, aha moment or a big strategy for starting to talk about politics, using Twitter as to talk about politics, but I really didn't. It just felt is intuition that I had to do it. But what's strange is that at the time, and in Canadian media, it's not an anti-gay environment, but we don't talk about. In Canadian media, the media personalities don't talk about their personal lives. It's a great thing, actually. But so to have a media personality talking about being gay, which is very rare, especially here in Calgary and Alberta, but then also going up against politicians and having these very serious discussions with them. It was something that was did not go very well all the time. So it's been a long road. Luckily, I'm happy to say we held a rally and a bunch of people got together and that bill was put on hold, and then eventually it came back, and now the bill's actually really great. And that was the previous PC government that did that, and the NDP government's just made it better. So I'm very happy about that. But I often, almost every day, use my social media to talk about politics in some form or another. Is it always sunshine and rainbows? Absolutely not. Some people can be pretty tough on me on social media. I've had fake accounts made about me. People call me dick. People call me bully, rude, all those sorts of things. I've had city councilors tweet about me, share to their followers to not follow me, to say rude things. And yeah, it sucks sometimes. It really does suck. I actually have gotten a thicker skin. It used to really, really upset me, especially because I make my money by working with brands. So if Ford is, we're going to work, we should check out Mike's blogging. Maybe we'll work with him. And they go to my Twitter feed, and I'm just tweeting about politics all the time. That doesn't really line up with them. But we'll talk about it a bit. But for me, it's always about, for me, if you're going to be a blogger, an influencer, or a modern kind of business in the way that Mike Morrison is a business, and that's taken me a long time to realize, this sort of stuff separates me from the pack. It is who I am. So if you meet me today, you know exactly who you're meeting because you've been following on Twitter, you've been following on Facebook or my Metro column or whatever. So you are meeting with me knowing everything there is really to know about me. Are you scared of hurting my business? And actually don't know if it has hurt my business because there might be people who say, who've gone to my social media and seen stuff and say, okay, maybe he's not the guy for us, and that's okay. I have never had a business pull out support of me, saying I was working with them and they're like, hey, this is too much. So I don't know if it has. But this is my favorite quote. I say Alexander Hamilton probably because depending where you look on the internet, but I know it from the musical Hamilton, and I freaking love it. But if you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? And I heard this quote. I listen to the musical every morning, actually, and I love this line because it really actually represents. I wasn't doing it consciously, but this is what actually I stand for. So I can't I can't. I just physically cannot. My friends have tried to be like, hey, let's maybe just let this issue go, for a bit, for a couple of days, and I just can't do it. I'm trying to do better at it, but that's always sort of my my mantra, I guess, is Mike Morrison will use his business, to share Canadian stories, to talk about great brands, companies, travel things. But I'm also going to use my social media influence to make sure that gay rights in Alberta, in particular, and cycling rights and things that I care about are taken care of. And that's because I actually think of all of our phones, all of our social media accounts as our own TV stations. So before, we used to email all these producers to get on TV shows and hope that you get on, and those are still great avenues. But you guys are all capable of getting an audience, almost as similar to local television or local newspapers, just by using your Twitter accounts and your Facebook accounts. And so all of a sudden, we all are media outlets, and I think that's something that's really cool. Because one of the things, if I'm being honest, is what I love about media is I would never, and looking the way I look, acting the way I act, talking the way I talk, would never be a host of a TV show by Canadian standards. They look a certain way, they act a certain way, and that's totally fine. But social media has given me a chance to be a media personality that I want to be, to tell the stories that I want to be, to share the stories I want to share, without having to sort of conform into certain media standards. And I think that's super exciting. So my not so official rules for talking about politics. Number one is be real. Never be worried to talk about who you really are. I think it was actually, you'd have to ask the PC government, but I think it was pretty jarring. Most of them lost. It's pretty jarring, I think, to have a person who at the time had still, I think my Twitter account was probably around 15,000, but for Calgarians it's pretty big, to have them calling out their anti-gay actions. That was and from a gay person, because that sort of traps them in his place. Like, what are they going to say that a few of them would ask to meet, and I actually don't meet with politicians because I don't want them to then tweet, oh, I met with Mike Splogety, and then that be used for other things later. But during all that time, I had politicians meet, oh, I'd love to hear your side of the gay rights debate. And I would always write, there is no side. It's black or white. It's gay rights, no gay rights. I can't explain it to you. So, and that's very real. So if you follow me on Twitter, Mike Splogety, at Mike Splogety, that's me, so I love McDonald's. Everyone knows that I love McDonald's. It's a great story. A friend of mine, a couple years ago, McDonald's emailed me and said, is someone paying you? And I was like, no, I just really love McDonald's. And they're like, great. And so then, I've started working with them recently, and one of my friends said they had a conversation, and they were like, did you see Mike Splogety totally sold out to McDonald's? He's talking about McDonald's, and the guy was like, that's the most real Mike Splogety's ever been. He loves McDonald's. That's very true. So for me, gay rights or cycling, if I fly, people will say, oh, I thought you were a cyclist, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to bike to Europe, okay. But I have rules. I've never said you should bike instead of driving, because I don't believe that. I do think cyclists have a right to be safe. I do think pedestrians have a right to be safe. And the drivers who don't like bike lanes have never presented to me an argument that actually makes a lot of sense. So I know when people say oh, you should bike to Europe, I can say, I've never said you can't drive. I've never said, and so I'm actually having a couple of dialogues with car companies right now. I just did Ford, and it's a fun, creative challenge for me to come up with the messaging, because I'm still bike friendly so much, but now to sort of switch it a bit and include cars and things like that. So. My other one is never personally insult. So you'll never hear me call anyone ugly, fat, stupid, lazy, anything like that on Twitter. And that's just the rule. And so one of the great reasons to do that is so when people say, Mike's a bully, Mike's really mean, Mike insulted me. Please show me where, because I know that I haven't. You might not like what I have to say. I might argue your politics, but that doesn't mean I'm insulting you. And that's just a really good rule. Be factual. No alternative facts here. Facts will help you win that argument every time. I'm actually shockingly not as partisan as people think. I've voted for every party except for one. I bet you can guess. But it's because I'm always based on facts. So I know, so the bike lane debate was actually really great, and I love the way the City of Calgary did it, that pilot project. And Edmonton's did not do a pilot project, they just implemented it, and you can see the difference. So if I'm debating with people about bike lanes, I can say, they'll say like, oh, no one biked today. I'm like, cool, there's actually an electric counter that we can see publicly. I'm gonna show you. So you can say only 200 people biked today, and that's a fact. But you can't say no one biked today. But basing your opinions on facts, it just, to me, it again makes you a bit more interesting, makes you a bit more informative. You know what you're talking about, and people respect that. And also be ready to engage. Is this the hill you're going to die on? It was a long time that I realized that I couldn't just tweet something and then walk away, because I'd waste so much of my time on Twitter and be like, what's happening? But for me, I like using, if I'm going to post something, I like to engage with people right away. And then one of the reasons that's really good is so it doesn't spiral out of control, and you're like not looking at your phone, and then people are like, oh, you're too chicken to debate. And you're like, no, I was like in the bathroom, like, geez. No, I'm kidding. I bring my phone into the bathroom. We all do. We all do. So being ready to engage is really important, so not, I actually, a couple weeks ago, last week I posted a joke about Subway's chicken. It's only 50% chicken DNA. It's terrifying. But I was like, no one ordered that chicken thinking it was chicken. That was like the least chicken thing in the world. And a friend of mine messaged me, and he's like, hey, I gotta get a breakdown on you why you tweeted about Subway. Aren't you worried about them not working with you? And I was like, oh, I actually never realized, I had this filter, but I never consciously for years actually thought about what that filter was. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna break this down. And so my rules are sort of, is it a joke, like a late night joke? Like, would you hear something like that on Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel? Then that's probably fine. I'm not saying anything that's not true. There was a story where it's 50% chicken. And it is me. Like, I go to Subway, but I've never ordered the chicken because it has fake grill marks on it. Don't order the chicken. So it was funny. It was a fun process for me to break down why I post sort of controversial tweets. And how it affects, and I didn't see it affecting my business. Obviously, if I was doing a contract with Subway right now, and they sort of said for a month, you could only say about Subway, which is sometimes how those contracts work. I never follow them. I'm terrible at contracts. I wouldn't make that joke probably, but I haven't worked with them yet, and probably now never will. And also take a break. Actually, my friend said this to me a couple weeks ago, and she was like one of those oh, I heard this quote, and you could totally tell she was talking about me. But she was like, isn't it neat? And it was, you'll never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. And that is absolutely true, and I am so guilty of that. I don't want. And I'm not, and you've probably all seen it if you follow on Twitter. Sometimes I am just angry and I don't like it. I'm mad about this, I'm mad about this, I'm mad about this. And then I remember once I was mad about something, and then I had scheduled some Coronation Street tweets in there. And so all of a sudden in my middle rant, there was like, can you believe what Ken Barlow did at the pub? And it was like, and so it's like, I love that you're bouncing back between both of these. I'm like, oh, but this is something I'm definitely focusing on. So, I would say, for a lot of people, that this was the photo of the rally a couple of years ago. And the neat thing about this photo, the pride flags we got from all the churches. We actually couldn't find, and so the churches gave us the pride flags, which I always want to give a big shout out to them. So for me, November this last year, in terms of the mistakes I've made in balancing social media, was when I started tweeting about rejoining the PC party to cast a vote against Jason Kenney, who anyone who knows Jason Kenney's career knows as a gay person, there's lots to be worried about. So, and this was the day after Donald Trump won, and so I decided to post, I'm rejoining the PC party. If anyone would like to cast a vote against him, if anyone would like to join me, please do. And it spiraled so out of control so quickly. It consumed me. At one point, I was on a press trip, and I basically just tweeted about that Jason Kenney stuff the whole time. And so it affects my business in that way. I got my hand slapped for that because the company I was working with, said like, you're here to work on this, not talk about that. And I had a hard time, honestly, since it's been I sort of scaled back because when you go up against someone as formidable as Jason Kenney, you get a lot of hate, you get a lot of mean things, you get a lot of, I've had people say things like, about where I live and nice new fence and things like that, and I've never posted anything where I live. And so some scary things happen and some shitty, can I say shitty? I said shitty. You can bleep that out. Some crappy stuff happens sometimes, and I've taken a lot of time the last couple of months to be reflective about that situation because with the former PC government Bill 10, I felt like I handled it really well, and I was trying to figure out what happened with the Kenney stuff, and I think what happened is I deviated. So for me, I have to stick to my core issues, which are LGBTQ rights, bike lanes, those are probably the main two ones for now. But I was sort of going on this, I was letting my anger fuel me. I was letting people's anger get me angrier and get me sadder, and I sort of was just spitting out stuff. And so it really, I think, affected my message in a bit. And lots of people joined, and lots of people voted against him, and that's fine, and that's great. My intention when I tweet stuff like that is never that I'll be on national news the next day. Sometimes it happens, and so that sort of, I think that probably did affect my business a bit, good ways and bad ways. But the more I do this, the more I define who I am, and bloggers aren't necessarily defined. We can be pretty ambiguous, and we can sort of, we let sometimes brands dictate what our message is. And so it's been an interesting road to figure out that the last couple of months has been really interesting. But what I learned from all of that, and when I really say I've been thinking about the last couple of months, I've gone on trips and and just chilled out, but not brought my phone and just try to figure out, because it took a lot out of me. But what I love about being political and using my business is it does make me unique. It does make me proud to own my businesses, and something like Social West is really interesting because one of our sponsors has said, when we first met, we said, like, I disagree with you completely on politics, completely, we're the opposite spectrum, but as a business, I respect you, so let's work together. And those are really important lessons for me to learn, because I don't know if I could do the same thing. And so to hear that from other businesses is really, and I'm getting them over to my side slowly. I'll get them. But that's really important to hear because I didn't go to business school. I don't have a marketing degree. My business is learning as I go, is figuring out as the days go on. But figuring out that a modern day business for me, when I am my business, is being sort of a confident person who has strong beliefs, who isn't afraid to share them. And what's happening too is I'm seeing more and more people do it. So one of the conversations we're having is maybe I don't have to fight every battle. And I've actually stepped back. People are already fighting battles. People are already doing it. It's not, so I can share their stories and I can share, and I'll wrap up. But one of the funny things, and it's the messaging too. I wanted to say this earlier, but so my boyfriend Richard, he's pretty political too, and no doubt motivates me a bit more. But he can post basically, him and I can post the same message, and like his people who disagree with him will be like, "That's a really great point, Richard," and they'll point, and for me, they're like, "You're a jerk. I hate you." Like I'm like, "Come on," but I think I've established that I can handle it. When the city councillor posted that thing about me being like the meanest person on Twitter, that ended up on Reddit, and it started off as Reddit. I don't know if you guys know Reddit, but it's a tough place. It's a school of hard knocks. So it started off really nice. It started off people making fun of the counselor, but then it switched to me. And then it's, Mike does this, Mike is mad about this, Mike's a whiny baby, Mike's blah, blah, blah. And there was all these comments, and years ago when this stuff happened, it used to really bug me. But the only comment that really bugged me this time, and it's sort of shown how I'm getting easier to handle it, there was one comment that said like, oh, I was at a party once, and you could tell he was just looking for the next best person to talk to. And I don't reply to people on Reddit, because there's no point. And this is going to end up on Reddit, and I'm going to get it. But I wanted to write back and be like, no, I actually hate parties. And I was probably looking for the exit. Like, it had nothing to do. But it's these people who form opinions about me, which is something I've asked for in a way, by putting my opinions out there. But it's always a balance of figuring it out. And I think if you go out there and if you want to be a bit more political, or not even political, if you want to talk about religion more, if you want to talk about business more, whatever, to me, it's a really good decision. Like, I don't need 34 million Canadians to read Mike's Bloggity Blog to make a living. I need 50,000 readers a month to make a living off Mike's Bloggity Blog. So what am I doing to get, if you like my politics, then you'll come to the blog. That's great. If you like what I do for business, you'll come, And so of course I'm going to burn some bridges, but some of those bridges are worth burning. I was at a high school this week, and I was talking about the Pride in Bill 10, and I was in the parking lot, and a student came running out and said, like, I just wanted to say thank you. Like, we started a GSA in the school because of that law, and so I wanted to say thank you so much. To me, worth it. Worth every mean Reddit, worth every mean tweet, every block, every mute, everything was that one student saying that they started a GSA because a bunch of us got together and took on the government and did something that was right. So if that costs me a few dollars here and there, then so be it. So yeah, excellent. That's my resignation. Thank you.